we'll stand for questions.
Senator Harrington, just as you were speaking, in social media, I heard from a police officer who said rank and file cops support it. It's just administration that's against it.
I disagree. Most of the rank and file cops that I've talked to are very concerned about the officers' safety consequences of this bill.
Three other police chiefs have called me, and they've told me they're afraid to speak out against their association because they'll be blackballed. I had one chief ready to come and testify, called him back to make arrangements. The association had called him and asked him to stay at home. They don't want to make it look like they're not unified at all. The sheriff down in one of my counties said, go get him, we need this law, we have needed it for years. He read the law. They're divided a lot. Last night I walked into a bar and there was 4 St. Paul cops in there. They came up and shook my hand. Their chief had testified against my bill. They came up and said, get it going, we need this law. So when you hear these people talking, don't just assume they speak for all law enforcement.
And as you can tell by the author of the bill, we are all not opposed to this legislation, and there may be chiefs that will come up later and testify in support of it.
My name is Todd Miller. I'm the Director of Public Safety for the City of Mankato. I would like to tell you a little bit about my background in terms of what brings me here. I've been a Chief of Police since 1976 in 4 different states. Now 17 years in Minnesota after a 16 years and then a 6-year hiatus in which I was a Chief of Police in the state of Texas. My concern here in testifying in favor of the bill, there's many areas where we're getting cut back, and I cannot promise that to the citizens that we can be there every time to protect themselves, for us to protect them.
First of all, I want to thank Mr. Chair and Senator Hoffman for giving me this opportunity to speak on a topic I feel quite passionately about. I have 35 years in law enforcement. I worked about split down the middle, rural area and metro area. I was on a SWAT team down here. I was a counter sniper, and I worked 9 years undercover for the East Metro Narcotics Task Force, and the last 13 years I was a police chief. Occasionally one hears people say we don't need arms for personal protection because we have the police. I come from a law enforcement family. My father served for over 50 years. I served for 35. I have a brother, an uncle, 2 cousins who are all cops. And now I have a son in college who is pursuing a career in law enforcement. It seems to be a genetic disorder in our family we haven't found a cure for. I jest, but I am very proud of my chosen vocation, but I'm painfully aware of our limitations. I find this sentiment that the police can handle all our problems flattering but highly inaccurate and dangerously naive. If your local law enforcement agency can boast a response time of 15 seconds, which we all know is highly unrealistic, the police will be 14 seconds too late.
Okay. I apologize for not being here early. I was chairing a committee on the other side. And I'm sorry I missed Police Chief Nelson's testimony, which I'm sure was very, very compelling, and if he would have brought along his dad, his dear dad, his dear friend, my dear friend Gary, who worked with the BCA for many years, would go on the stand here and would have us totally convinced inside and out what the Second Amendment does really mean in the United States, as he was a very strong proponent of that, as I was a neighboring sheriff. And I've been to one too many funerals where their officers have been killed. And those officers, those very officers that have been killed, have investigated many crimes where if victims would have had some means of protecting themselves, whether it's in their car or in their home, that would have been a different outcome. We would have afforded those people the opportunity to protect themselves. So I applaud the senator for bringing this forward. These are certainly not easy issues, but to me it's very common sense. Let's allow the good folks in our community that are willing to protect themselves, give them the opportunity to protect themselves against those that are out there willing to harm us and harm them or their kids or their grandkids or anybody else.
Representative Fabian.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Cornish, yes I did. I talked to 4 local law enforcement officials in my district yesterday and this morning. Chief Deputy in Roseau County, the Roseau City Chief of Police, the Greenbush city chief of police and the Kittson County sheriff, and they were all supportive of the bill. Two of them in particular were extremely happy that they said that this was a bill that was past due, and it's something that we should get passed.
And remember, people, the Castle Doctrine, the Stand Your Ground, is in 20 other states, and we haven't heard of any problem. But all of a sudden, you think the sky is going to fall if we do it in Minnesota.